2, 1. Welcome to Dodgers Dogs. As part of the Dodgers Daily Network, I want to apologize right off the bat. We just had a massive rainstorm come through here in Oklahoma, and so my internet speed is really crap right now. So Austin's going to look like he is coming straight out of about a 1979 Pong game. Actually, I think Pong was probably black and white, but let's try an Atari system. That's what Austin's going to look like tonight. So if he's all jumbled up, there's literally nothing I can do about it because the rainstorm literally just came through about 10 minutes ago. But hey, Austin, great to see you again tonight. We have a lot to talk about today.
We have a lot to talk about, and rain, I guess, is a little better than a snowstorm, which here in the state of Michigan, we should be getting something fairly quickly. I'm not anticipating any coming yet. Snowstorms are starting to become part of the season. That's what happens when we start getting into the later parts of fall, which means that it's time for the World Series.
Absolutely. So Trey Savage, let's dive into this, okay? He's got the sinker, okay? And then also what I wanted to get into was, some of the matchups in terms of that's going to happen to Austin for all night long. He's going to have bad video. There's going to be a delay. You're just going to have to deal with that. So first of all, dive into Trey Savage. Let's dive into that matchup. There's not a whole lot in terms of the Dodgers against him because he only just started pitching in the major leagues this year. He's been just fantastic and dynamic. So talk about him a little bit.
Okay, so let's break down Trey Savage a little bit because I don't think Dodgers fans realize just how incredible of a season he had. He started out this year in low A. And let me read you some of the numbers. Let me specifically read you some of the strikeout numbers he had by level as to...
I'm sorry, I won't do that. My bad.
Go ahead, the Edgardo Henriquez thing. Let me read you some of the strikeout numbers that Trey Savage had over the course of his career throughout the professional level. So at single A, he had a strikeout percentage of 43%. He was too good for single A. Moved up to high A, 37.8%. Too good for high A. Moved up to double A, 38%. Too good for double A. Moved up to triple A, 36%. He had a 41% at the minor league level. And then during his 3 starts was about a 26% strikeout percentage for Trey Savage. Insane swing and miss ability. And he has some really unique characteristics to a lot of his different elements. If you go by Baseball Savant on how they map out the different types of pitches he has, one thing that's going to stand out the most is his wicked splitter. His splitter is absolutely nasty, and during the limited time that he has had in big leagues, opposing hitters have not had a chance to be able to hit it. Just a 111 batting average against that pitch with really no slugging ability, a ton of swing and miss with percentage of 57% on that splitter. But what's going to be really difficult for the Dodgers to be able to navigate in this game is what they label as his slider, which is a very unique pitch. Because most sliders you think of, like what you think of a late timing pitch, down and away from right-handed pitchers. His slider has a little bit more of arm side run to it, which makes it a unique pitch, which especially for the Dodgers as an organization that has not seen Trey Savage pitch, this is going to be a unique arsenal for them to go up against that's gotten a ton of swing and miss, and right now he's pitching with a ton of confidence.
Yeah. So let me throw this at you. I agree with everything you're saying. So he gets a lot of swing and miss. You know why he gets a lot of swing and miss? What would if I were to ask you, why do you think he gets a lot of swing and miss?
Why would you say that, Casey?
Because he throws it not in the strike zone. So like if you throw a pitch and it looks like it's going to start in the strike zone, ends up not in the strike zone. Those are the pitches that get the most amount of swing and miss. So he throws his splitter in the zone 42% of the time. That kind of like Gausman. Gausman's 32%. So he throws it in the zone a little bit better than Gausman, but not enough for it to be a game plan to where the Dodgers can say, well, hey, we have to swing at that. So the slider is good for him, but I really think the difference between whether Savage is going to have success or not is going to be a sinker, because I think he can move that sinker post pitch in on the hands of the Dodgers right-handers and away from the left-handers and miss the end of the bat, get in on the hands. and create some soft contact from there. So I think the Dodgers game plan is going to be force him to throw strikes with the splitter, force him to throw strikes low in the zone, don't swing anything down the zone. Another thing that Savage does is that he gets a ton of ground balls. So what he does is he throws the splitter that looks like a strike, breaks into a ball. He gets you to swing at it. He gets miss. Then he throws the slider and the sinker, and then depending on which hand it is, it either goes to the end of the bat or in on the hands, and he creates weak contact. And then what he does is that he pitches down to the bottom of the zone and gets a lot of ground balls. So what beats that is a lot of discipline. A, don't swing at the splitter to begin with. B, don't swing at the sinker low in the zone. And C, don't swing at the slider. End of discussion. And then just swing at the sinkers that are in the middle of the plate. And then I'll say this, we already have this comment from V-Track. I think it's a good comment to make. You're talking about a guy you just mentioned. He started at the low A level. He's in the World Series, man. This is going to be a huge stage. I'm going to be interested to see. And the Dodgers don't let you off the hook at all because the first hitter he's going to see is Shohei Ohtani. And so how is he going to handle that?
That is going to be a massive challenge for Trey Savage and a stage that he has never been a part of. You also wonder if the inexperience is going to be something to where he's faced a lot of different challenges, not necessarily at the big league level, but he seems to be rising to the occasion each and every single time he's gone out there, which creates a little bit of naiveness to where, yeah, I'm good enough to be able to go out and do this, and a little bit of confidence. I think what you mentioned is exactly right for the Dodgers. It takes a over-disciplined approach to be able to go out against Gausman, against Savage, two pitchers that are going to get some swing and miss from their splitters. You have to be able to eliminate that pitch down and out of the zone and be able to take only the stuff that's in the zone. That is the only way to be able to have any amount of success, because if there is chase with Savage, he is going to get a ton of swing and miss.
So let me throw this at you, and we're not trying to. We both squarely feel like the Dodgers are the favorite. So let's say that, and I say that to say, we're just trying to cover all the bases in terms of, hey, if you see this is to the advantage of Toronto. If you see this, that's to the advantage of the Dodgers, that kind of thing. So we're not trying to create a narrative that the Blue Jays are better than the Dodgers in any way, shape, or form or anything like that. But let me say this. Is it deceptive? Because I think there is a little bit of deception going on here from Dodgers fans, because the Yankee series right in front of the Mariners series backed up all the way into that Saturday. And really the Blue Jays, they didn't get to set up their pitching until game 3. And so when you look at what the Blue Jays were able to do from the time they actually had their pitching set up till the time they finished off the Mariners, they actually won 3 out of 4 games. So although it overall they didn't win 3 out of 4 games, they won the 3 out of the 4 games once they got their pitching reset, because they had to go so long against the Yankees. So because they didn't have their pitching set in the first 2 games, and it went as long as it did, and they had such a struggle with the Mariners, I think that's giving off a little bit of a deceptive vibe about just how good the Toronto Blue Jays are.
And I think there perhaps can be, because of the experience of the Dodgers, just overconfidence because the Dodgers have been there before. Now, I think that gives the Dodgers an advantage, certainly, because they have been there before and because they have done this, something that many, if not Blue Jays players, have not had this experience in the postseason, which means this is going to bring something brand new for them. But this Toronto Blue Jays team is really good. And there's a reason why we're going over a lot of these numbers, and we're covering Toronto Blue Jays is because they were the number 1 seed in the American League. Now, you can say the National League is better than the American League this year. I don't have arguments against that whatsoever, but that does not mean that this Toronto Blue Jays team is bad. They are a very good ball club, and they're going to go out and give everything they have, and they know what their identity is, which means that we have to be able to cover what the Blue Jays identity is. Even if we think the Dodgers are going to win, you have to be able to know what your opponent is doing in order to be able to know how to best combat them. With the Brewers, it was all about execution. With the Blue Jays, especially their pitching staff, from what we've seen so far, it is about discipline, being able to not chase pitches, which starts with the starters and the swing and miss stuff that they're not swinging and missing and chasing those pitches, but taking your pitches to get to the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. And with the bullpen that walks a lot of hitters, using that plate discipline as well is going to be so important for the Dodgers this series.
Why would they pitch you Savage game one? For one, he's a rookie. I mean, yeah, maybe you're trying to strike that lightning in a bottle, like he's just so inexperienced that he doesn't even know that he's supposed to be nervous. Maybe you're kind of banking on that, but I mean, you're starting a guy that was in single A at the beginning of the year. In the first game of the World Series, I don't know why you would do that for one. I question that. Hey, they have a great manager, John Schneider. And what I like about him is he's a people's guy. He instead of, if it comes down to analytics versus a player, he's going to go with a player just almost every single time. So I love the way that he does things there for Toronto. But having said that, I don't think pitching a rookie in the first game of this, especially now, hey, if it was like they played yesterday and now we're going to play tomorrow and it's just a normal baseball routine, yeah, maybe. But Savage has had all week to sit around and think about this. And to throw a rookie out there, man, that's tough-ass duty right there, especially against a team that's going to force you to execute as pinpoint as the Dodgers are going to.
So this becomes a real question about the psychology of how you line up your starters. One, it's important to note Kevin Gausman did pitch in the game on Monday in Game 7, so he had at least a little bit of pitching during that. Now, I don't think that necessarily completely prevented him from being the Game 1 starter, but perhaps they wanted to get him at least additional rest to be ready to go for a Game 2. But this becomes a question, especially with your rookie, with your young guy. He's going to be waiting around anyway, whether he's waiting for Game 1 or whether he's waiting for Game 2. And the question is, do you want to put him in a situation where it's a 0-0 as far as the series goes, or potentially if it does not go the Blue Jays' way, do you want to put a rookie in a position to where you're potentially in a 1-0 deficit against the Dodgers, going back to LA with all the pressure on the rookie pitcher, trying to prevent it from being a 2-0 Dodgers league? Yep. I think that's probably
too much pressure having to be the stopper
for Trey Savage.
Sorry.
An insane amount of pressure trying to be that stopper. Now, if this gets into a Game 5 and he's trying to get it back to Toronto or pitching in some sort of elimination game on the road, that's going to be an insane amount of pressure on him. So I think the decision was, do we want to make the difficult game in Game 2, or do we want to potentially hold that down on the road? I think they just ultimately with Savage in this game, partly because of the rest with Kevin Gausman having him pitched on Monday, but also because I think this is going to be the best for his psychology. And also Trey Savage is a very, very good pitcher.
Yeah. That makes all the sense in the world. That's only 3 days rest. Obviously Gausman's out, so it would be somebody else. It would be Shane Bieber. It would be a Max Scherzer, or even I think maybe a sneaky move here for the Blue Jays would be maybe an Eric Lauer, because Eric Lauer being left-handed might be able to neutralize Shohei Ohtani. So I think if the Blue Jays go with like a bullpen game, I think you're probably going to see Eric Lauer first, so he can face Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. Lauer's been a starter in the past. I think that might be a factor there. But I think you hit that nail right on the head. What you don't want to have happen is lose Game 1 with like a Shane Bieber on the bump, something like that. And now you have Trey Savage having to salvage the season for Toronto, and that is just an enormous amount of pressure that you don't want to put on a rookie. So that makes sense, Austin.
Yeah, and it was Shane Bieber that started the game on Monday, so he would have been available. So it was Max Scherzer versus a Trey Savage was likely the decision that they had to make if Kevin Gausman wasn't available.
So I got that wrong. When did Gausman pitch last?
They believe in a lot more.
I'm sorry.
Gausman pitched on Monday. He came out of the bullpen on Monday.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's what screwed him up. See, that's what screwed him up. We're having delays in our audio, so I apologize if it sounds like we're talking over each other. I will do better with that. I'll try to be very professional with that. So because I didn't actually get to see that game. I was actually having to work that night. I followed along with it. So I'm glad you cleared that up. So that's what got them screwed up in the Mariners series, is that they had to fight so hard against the Yankees. They didn't have their pitching set up in games 1 and games 2. So do you think Gausman would be available for Saturday?
Yes, Gausman, I can almost guarantee you, is going to be pitching on the game on Saturday. So it's going to be Savage and Gausman, and I think their pitching is lined up exactly. Perhaps you would switch around, switch it around, but I think this was a good rotation lineup for the Blue Jays to be able to go out there to where their starting pitching, I don't think, is very much impacted. I think even if it goes 7, because of the rest between the end of the championship series, and there is enough rest to where maybe you have your second best guy going number 1, but then that second game you can have your best starter going out there to where Savage is going to be pitching in game 5 and Gausman is going to be pitching in game 6, and they are going to be just fine from a rotation standpoint, even if the Dodgers rotation is better.
Yeah. Okay. So what is your Savage? What would be? Here's another deal that concerns me. Not concerns me. If you're a Blue Jays fan, concerns you. Okay, that's part of the advantage that the Dodgers have. To me, where the series was lost for Milwaukee was whenever they threw the bullpen game 1, and the Dodgers got to see all of the high leverage bullpen arms, and they're like, okay, now all we have to do is beat Corbin Burns, and this thing is over, right? Which is exactly what happened. So if I was a Blue Jays fan, what I would be really worried about. I mean, Savage, if everything goes the way it has, as good as he's pitched, he's not providing length. And so even if he does pitch good like he has been, you're still probably talking about the Blue Jays having to cover every bit of 3.5, maybe 4 innings. And that's going to give the Dodgers a really good look in game 1 against all the best leverage arms for Toronto, which is the exact same setup and what put Milwaukee in trouble.
Yeah, that is going to be the question. So Savage in his 3 appearances has gone to 15 innings. So he's averaged about 5 innings per appearance, which gives you some opportunities to get some additional looks at the Toronto bullpen, which this is entirely has to be the game plan of the Dodgers, not just being disciplined so you lay off on the pitches that you'll generate swing and miss, but so you can get to the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen early. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be so incredibly important for the Dodgers this series, is getting as many looks at some of these guys as possible. And it is up to the Blue Jays. And this is where game planning actually is important, and where it's not just a feel in the moment. You have to also have a strategy and a plan going into it. You have to give different guys out of the bullpen different looks to different parts of the roster, meaning it can't be Louis Varland versus Shohei Ohtani each and every single time out there, because Shohei Ohtani is going to get plenty of looks at Louis Varland. You have to have Louis Varland, who has pitched a ton this series, get different looks at different parts of the lineup, which means he's got to face the top part of the order. He also has to go through some of the middle part of the order if you are the Toronto Blue Jays, just to provide different looks and space in between when each of these guys see each other. And this does not just apply to the Blue Jays. This applies to the Dodgers and their use of guys like Roki Sasaki and of Blake Treinen, and giving them different matchups to be able to go up order so that they can be the most effective over the course of a full 7-game series.
Gausman threw 19 pitches on Monday. I'm sorry, I'm throwing Kevin Gausman if I'm the Blue Jays. I'm not on board with that if I'm with them.
So then what you would be doing is you would be saying, okay, Trey Savage, you're going games 2 and you're going game 6. That would be the decision that you would have, regardless of what the deficit is, 1-0, you're up 1-0, or you're down 1-0. That would be the conversation that you would have. Or is there any sort of implication, like, for example, for Kevin Gausman, since he pitched on Monday, is there any sort of limitations to the amount of pitches that he's going to be able to throw?
He threw 19 pitches. That's not even a bullpen.
Okay, and that is a question for the Toronto Blue Jays. That's also a question and evaluation from their internal perspective about Kevin Gausman. And this is some of the deepest that he has pitched in his professional career. And I think that's something that's really important to remember with this Toronto staff is a lot of these guys have not pitched this far into their career or this late into the season. Whereas a lot of the Dodgers arms, they're very much fresh because they did not pitch a whole lot through the course of the regular season, which is why they're pitching so effectively.
Here is where this makes no sense for the Blue Jays to throw Savage and not Gausman. So if it's game, so it's going to be game 1 and game what? Game 5? He's going to throw game 5?
For Savage, game 5, yes.
So you want him throwing in LA instead of Toronto? So if you throw him 2 and 6, he's getting to pitch at home both times.
That is the decision that the Blue Jays had to make. Which one do they weigh more? Do they weigh the important go in a 1-0 deficit and you want your ace if you're in a 1-0 deficit, or do you weigh more the fact that he's got to pitch in LA? And that ultimately is the decision that the Blue Jays made.
Yeah, it is. And again, Austin's cutting out some, and I apologize that the video is not good. We're going to do our best here. Again, we had a big rainstorm. I really, really appreciate everybody joining in here. So, okay, here's another advantage that if you were to say that the Blue Jays could take advantage of the Dodgers, just pathways to them having success, that kind of thing, is the splitter for both Trey Savage and Kevin Gausman. But if you look at what the Dodgers have done, they've been one of the best hitting teams against splitters all year long. And they haven't been quite as good against the splitter in the postseason. But the Dodgers have almost a 300 weighted on a WOBA, you like to say WOBA, weighted on base average against the splitter. So maybe the one big weapon that Gausman, and of course Savage has a couple of other weapons, but the biggest weapon that they have, the splitter, is actually something the Dodgers are very good at neutralizing. And because of that, the splits between right and left, anytime somebody has a reverse split, it's because they have a certain pitch that's good against the opposite hand. Typically speaking, that's a splitter, right? And so the Dodgers have the ability, with the way that they have been good against the splitter, to take away the number one biggest neutralizing factor in being good against both right-handers and left-handers, which would be the splitter.
Yeah, so let's look at individual players, because if you look at the Dodgers against that specific type of pitch, one, we already mentioned the Blue Jays are the best team and have been the best team in baseball against hitting splitters. If we look at the splitters runs above average, which is a StatCast value that you can find on Facebook, or on Fangraphs, I should say, not Facebook, 11.5 for Toronto. For the Dodgers, 5.6, which is 4th in Major League Baseball in that category. Good. But if you go by individual basis, for split fingers against each one of these guys, Andy Pages has a 333 batting average with a 667 slugging percentage on splitters this year. Mookie Betts is batting 500 with a 573 WOBA against splitters. Freddie Freeman is hitting for a lot of power against splitters, a 947 slugging percentage against splitters. Shohei Ohtani has done well against splitters as well. They have some guys, even Max Muncy has done pretty well against splitters. They have some guys that have done well against splitters, but it is about the individual pitchers. And with Trey Savage, if you are going to get a splitter that you're going to hit, it has to be a mistake, which means that you have to take off, or you have to lay off those splitters that are down below the zone, because those ones you're not going to take advantage of. You're not going to hit. It has to be mistake pitches, which means that you have to be disciplined in the zone, even with that splitters that you're going up against. The Dodgers have to be disciplined as a team.
They absolutely 100% do, but I just think whenever you crunch it and you go, okay, well, the Blue Jays don't have any lefty starters, although Eric Lauer, I think, could probably start a game to change that narrative. Their 3 lefties out of the pen haven't been very good, but Shane Bieber, at least in the last 9 games he's thrown, has been good against lefties. Kevin Gausman, although he's better against righties, hasn't been terrible against lefties. And so Trey Savage has actually been really, 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 really good against lefties. So although they don't have a lefty starter, their right-handed starters have been either good or very good against lefties, but I think that's because of the splitter. And then even when you break that down further, that splitter should be taken away by the Dodgers because they've been good against that. I think that's even more of just kind of damning evidence that the Dodgers should win this.
The issue with the Blue Jays is not that their starters aren't good against lefties. Max Scherzer has not been good against lefties. All three of the other ones have been really good against lefties during their action this year, albeit Bieber and Yosavage limited action.
Yes.
Where their issue is their high leverage bullpen arms that struggle against lefties, which that is where the advantage late game could come to the Dodgers, and where the Blue Jays are going to be relying so heavily on Brendan Little, Mason Fluharty, and Eric Lauer to that part of the order, because those are the guys that have to get the lefty hitters out of the bullpen, because many of the other righties, the high leverage righties, struggle more against left-handed hitters.
Yeah. So here's another factor too. Okay, man, that stadium in Toronto, that thing is going to be absolutely rocking. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere, which on the surface, you'd say, okay, that's going to be a big advantage for Toronto, right? Okay, well, Philadelphia is the best atmosphere in baseball. Milwaukee is an incredible atmosphere. And so this Dodgers team, they're on June 17th at Anaheim Stadium when there's, maybe 15,000 opposing fans in the stands, the Dodgers might get bored, okay? But it just seems like whenever they get big environments like this, you take a Kike Hernandez, who's about halfway ADHD, right? And he would admit that. A Teo Hernandez, who can get very bored at times with a regular season. I think that big environment actually favors the Dodgers more than does the Blue Jays, especially considering they're throwing a rookie.
I think the Dodgers have shown that they have an ability to be able to step up in the big moments and take advantage of the big environments that they have. And especially for this offense, this has to be something that they take advantage of early in the game. Now, just a little bit, in case you guys do not know, and this is something that we don't have any further information about, Alex Vesia is going through some personal stuff right now, and it is question mark as far as his availability, at least for the early part of the World Series, which means it is of utmost importance that the Dodgers get out to a lead early, because while Toronto is going to be electric, and I think that's going to really help the offense. Just come back to the Dodgers is if their offense gets off to a cold start. And now the trust tree bullpen arms that you have, especially if you're going to be missing Vesia for at least 1 or 2 games, that could be a very big impact to that bullpen, because you might be going towards the outside of Dave Roberts' trust tree. You might be relying on some more of an Emmett Sheehan and a Jack Dreyer, who pitched incredibly well during the regular season, but have not had that high leverage moment in the postseason. That is where the environment could potentially come back to haunt the Dodgers, and where their offense really has to step up early in the series and be incredibly, I keep saying it over and over again because it's so true, incredibly disciplined early, get to the Blue Jays bullpen so that you can have a lead and a little bit of a cushion for this bullpen, which is missing one of its key guys, or at least potentially missing one of its key guys going into the World Series.
Is this the best team the Dodgers will have faced in the postseason?
It's a very difficult question. I lean a little bit more towards the Phillies because of the matchup, specifically with their left-handed starters that are so incredibly talented, so good. But that does not underestimate how good this Blue Jays team actually is. I lean a little bit more towards Phillies, like I think most fans do, but the Blue Jays are really good.
So if I were to say, okay, well, you have 2 teams playing, and one team is a lot better than the other, what is the first thing that you would tell the underdog team that they need to do in a game?
Okay, well, you have to go out and you have to punch first. You have to be able to score first and be able to. You have to go out there and make a statement.
You have to score first. I mean, even if you're the favorite, whenever you score first, like the Dodgers win like 75% of the time when they score first. That's why I just don't understand why the Blue Jays, maybe they think Trey Savage is their best bet. As a coach, being in the industry for all this time with the environment it's going to be, the first hitter that Savage is going to face, the fact that the longest he's gone is 5 2/3 innings, the fact that Gausman has that splitter. I know that Savage does too, but Gausman, has the splitter, and I just think for Toronto, it's not urgent enough to say, really probably our best and maybe only chance to win this series is if we first win game 1 and then deal with game 2 whenever it gets to us.
I don't know. If Toronto does win game 1, they're going to be sitting pretty confident going into game 2 with their ace on the mound. That being said, Trey Savage, I'm just going to keep repeating it, is a really good pitcher and somebody that the Dodgers have not seen. They've seen a lot of Kevin Gausman in the past, especially in his San Francisco Giant days. They have some guys that have hit Kevin Gausman in the past, or at least seen him quite a bit. They have had nobody that has seen Trey Savage before, and he's got some weird stuff about his pitch mix, yes. And just like with that slider that he has, is very sliders, and it's going to be a unique pitch for the Dodgers to be able to attack.
It is. So tomorrow night's game, what do you think? What are the keys to tomorrow night's game? The Dodgers versus Savage, and as we move forward here in the series.
As you move forward in the series, it has to be get to the bullpen early. It's going to be a race for both teams. And perhaps this is something that we have not talked about too much with the Blue Jays with as much contact as they make, but some of the contact does not have to be all in play. Some of it can just be spoiling pitches. Some of it can just be work up pitch counts, and I think whichever team works up the pitch count and gets to the bullpen the quickest is going to have an advantage later in the series, and is going to lead to a key moment either in game 4 or game 5 when some of these bullpen arms are overused, just like we saw a key moment in game 7 for Blue Jays going up against the Mariners. Edward Pizarro was overutilized, and when he came in during series, George Springer had seen him quite a bit, and he knew exactly what was happening. It's a race to the bullpen. How quickly can you get to that bullpen and start getting some of the looks at some of these guys? I'm looking at the long game in this series, while also trying to find different ways to be able to rattle Trey Savage, especially if you're a Dodgers team that does not chase. Do not chase, be disciplined, and find a way to be able to avoid swinging.
It's just so surface to say, okay, well, the Toronto Blue Jays, I'm gonna go ahead and read this because it's worth reading. And this is straight from you, Austin. I forgot to give you credit on X today. I will go back and do that. I'll repost it tomorrow and make sure and give you credit for these numbers because they're simply fantastic. Okay, so the Blue Jays, as far as their offense, George Springer, WRC plus of 210 in the second half of the season. His WRC plus so far this postseason is 150. So between Lucas, Guerrero, Clement, Barger, and Jimenez, 388 points higher than they were in the second half in terms of their WRC plus. Alejandro Kirk has been at 107 WRC plus, which is awesome for a catcher. Dalton Varsho is second, is behind his second half numbers, but he's posted a WRC plus of 121. So even the guys like a George Springer and a Dalton Varsho that have at a lower WRC plus in the postseason than they had in the second half, still their WRC pluses in the postseason have been fantastic. So there is no denying the Toronto Blue Jays have had a great offense, and it's only gotten better in the postseason. So it's just really easy to say it's that great offense versus the Dodgers' great pitching. But I'm actually going to go at this a little bit different. I'm just going to say if the Dodgers hit the ball in this series, okay, it's over, period. If the Dodgers hit the ball like they're capable of hitting against the Toronto Blue Jays pitching, this series is over. Not saying they will. I just say if they do that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the way that the Blue Jays have succeeded, it overperformed as an offense, especially in the power department. It draws a little bit, and as the Dodgers have limited the power that opponents has had, that is going to be a very difficult challenge for the Blue Jays to be able to overcome.
Yeah. So Blake Snell, is there anything that concerns you about here is the doomsday for Blake Snell against Toronto. Okay. He walks 3 or 4 guys, which he's totally capable of doing, right? I mean, we've seen Blake Snell. It's called the Snell experience for a reason, and that's because he's like out of the zone, in the zone, and he's driving you nuts. But next thing you look up, he's throwing a couple of zeros. So here would be how Toronto gets to him, is that he's out of the zone. He walks 4 or 5 guys, and on a couple of occasions after he walks a guy, Toronto goes yard like they've been doing in the postseason, and they score 4 runs in the first 5 innings. And the Dodgers, just because they sometimes for no reason can just play really lackluster offense, they don't score until about the 6th or 7th inning. I think that's probably the one doomsday scenario I can see for the Dodgers tomorrow against Snell. But what are the possible pitfalls for Blake Snell tomorrow for you?
It's if he does not have command of his pitches, and that's both goes out of the zone and in the zone. If he does not have command on his fastball and he's not hitting it on the corners of the zone or just outside the zone where the Blue Jays pitchers are going to chase, if he leaves one right down the middle, they are either going to get base hits, or the worst case scenario is if they start hitting for power against Blake Snell. Now, Blake has been incredible at preventing home runs this season, just 0.44 home runs per 9. Last year, he was really solid at that. But if that gets reversed, and this is what Toronto has reversed the trends of power, if they reversed that in this series, Blake Snell is going to have some issues, especially if he's giving up some walks, which he is more than capable of doing. That being said, he's been phenomenal at keeping it in the zone in the postseason and really mixing up his pitches. And so I'm expecting that version of Blake Snell to show up.
Okay, we have Chuck Huddleston, who's at the Olive Garden right now with the grandson and the wife. Okay, Chuck, I need you to turn your phone up as loud as you can. Okay, as loud as you can. I need you to point the phone to the rest of Olive Garden so I can say this really loud and the entire restaurant can hear me, okay? I'm going to give you a second or two. Point your phone up, turn it up as loud as you can. Go Dodgers, beat the Blue Jays. Let's go, baby. Chuck Huddleston in the house, Austin.
Yeah, that's great to see. Have fun at Olive Garden. Get all those breadsticks.
Absolutely. 100%. Okay, so more keys as we go on to this. We've kind of talked about maybe what are some of the things that if Blake Snell just goes and mows down the Toronto Blue Jays, why would it be? We know others we know that he's great for one, but why would it be that the Toronto Blue Jays, after hitting so well for such a long period, this isn't just a postseason hot thing. They've been hitting very well for so long. Why would it be that Blake Snell just says, not anymore, not against me? Why would it be?
It's because he's getting them to chase at pitches out of the zone, and they're hitting it for weak contact. That is going to be the way that Blake Snell is going to be able to have a lot of success, is if the swing decision for the Blue Jays, as far as the pitches that they go ahead and swing at, which they're an aggressive team at swinging the bat, are not at good pitches. And Blake Snell is able to mix and match speeds, throw that changeup to get some swing and miss, but also to get that to roll over to third base for a ground out. That's going to be the way that they're going to be able to have success, is getting a lot of weak contact against the Blue Jays. Okay, so here's another thing. If I know you look at the Dodgers defense versus Toronto's defense, and Austin is just trying to warn us from an analytical perspective just how good Toronto is. And I'm on the other side of the coach side saying, screw that, man, we're going to kick their ass, right? That's kind of how we have this going right now, which makes this a lot of fun. So if I were to ask you, we know that the Blue Jays defense is really, really, really good, better than the Dodgers. Maybe, because let me ask you this. What part of the Dodgers defense has not been good? The outfield defense has not been good for the Dodgers.
In particular, who?
It has been Teoscar Hernandez and Michael Conforto, but particularly Teoscar Hernandez.
Okay, and guess who is not on this roster?
There's no Michael Conforto that's part of this roster.
So all of the stats that we read about the Dodgers defense this, the Dodgers defense that, and then also, would we not all have to agree that Mookie Betts for the last month or two has been a lot better than he was for the first month or two? Would we agree with that?
Of course. Mookie Betts is a great defensive player. That's not where the issue with the Dodgers defense is at.
Right. So the issue, one of the big issues is with Michael Conforto. Gone. You have Kike Hernandez out there. And then the other issue is Teo Hernandez. And if you get a lead, he's gone. So by the time you have a lead in the 7th or 8th inning, the Blue Jays aren't actually a better defense than what the Dodgers have on the field. And even without Michael Conforto, I'm not totally...
I disagree with that.
So whenever the Dodgers make their defensive replacements, you don't think they're ever been as good defensively as the Blue Jays at that point with Andy Pages in right field?
I think we are underestimating just how good the Toronto Blue Jays defense is. So let's take into account. It depends on which stat that you want to go at.
Are they better than Mookie Betts and Tommy Edman
each
up
one
the
of the
middle?
positions to be able to see where the. Okay, let's look at that because it depends on what their up the middle defense is. If they have Bo Bichette up the middle, Bo Bichette is not a good defender. However, Andres Jimenez is incredible. 9 defensive run saves, 10 outs above average, 7 fielding run value. He's incredible with what he is up the middle. Look at some of the other guys. Ernie Clement, 22 defensive run saves, 13 outs above average, 9 fielding run value. Incredible. Dalton Varsho, 10 defensive run saves in center field, 9 outs above average, 6 fielding run value. Incredible in the outfield. What I'm just trying to say is, relatively speaking, the Blue Jays have a lot more great defenders. The Dodgers have some really good defenders at their positions, this is not to say that the Dodgers have a bad defense, because up the middle is really solid for the Dodgers. The Mookie Betts, who has been incredible at shortstop this season, combined with Tommy Edman, who's one of the best defensive second basemen in the game of baseball, is incredible up the middle defense. And Andy Pages has made a ton of strides, but Dalton Varsho is one of the best defensive center fielders in the game of baseball. Andres Jimenez is one of the best defensive infielders in the game of baseball, and they have other players that are really, really solid. All I'm trying to say with that is that Toronto Blue Jays had one of, if not the best defense in the entire game of baseball in the course of the season. And if you break it down individually, who's on the roster, that still stands out, because you can say, yeah, the Dodgers are missing Michael Conforto, but not all of the defensive inefficiencies lie with Michael Conforto. There's still some other holes. Teoscar Hernandez, not a great defender. Max Muncy, not a great defender. You can go, you can point to those guys, and you can have question marks as far as Kike Hernandez and his ability in left field, although I think he's pretty solid, but he's not as good as somebody who has been there each and every single time, which the Blue Jays will have somebody a little bit more experience out there. So this is just to say that the Blue Jays have been a really, really good defensively. What was that?
He won't be out there after the defensive replacements, though. You're going to be talking about other guys. Teo Hernandez and Kike Hernandez, neither one, when the Dodgers have the lead in the late innings, that's what I'm talking about. I think if you match up, innings 1 through 6, whatever, I think the Blue Jays have a better overall defense. But whenever the Dodgers get a lead and make all their outfield substitutions, I think at that point that advantage goes away. That's what I'm saying. Because whenever I know all these guys are good, okay, but when you're talking about Mookie Betts, who's playing Gold Glove caliber shortstop, Tommy Edman, who is a Gold Glove caliber second baseman, Freddie Freeman, Gold Glove caliber first baseman, Will Smith has one of the best throwing arms in the entire game of baseball. They don't have a better 4 guys than that.
They absolutely have better 4 defensive guys as far as their value. Alejandro Kirchner is one of the best defensive catchers in the game of baseball. Absolutely phenomenal with what he's able to do. Dalton Varsho, one of the best defensive center fielders in the game of baseball.
No, infield wise. I'm talking about the infield. I'm talking about shortstop, second, first, and catcher. They're not better than the Dodgers at those positions. Overall, when you weigh overall.
If you are talking about those, I would still lean deeply towards the Blue Jays. Offensively, absolutely to the Dodgers. Defensively, though, I think the Blue Jays have a ton of talent. I think we're underestimating what their defensive ability is.
No way in the world am I taking Toronto's defense over Mookie Betts, Tommy Edman, Freddie Freeman, and Will Smith. Absolutely no way am I making that trade. You're disagreeing with me?
Okay, and I am just telling you what the numbers and what the analytics actually say, backing up where their defense actually is. You can throw out all the analytics and you can say I'm right full with what the Dodgers.
You're not throwing Tommy Edman into those analytics. Tommy Edman's been injured. He's a Gold Glove second baseman.
It's fair enough. He absolutely is an incredible second baseman.
And Mookie Betts has been a Gold Glove caliber in the last.
Blue Jays have as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you with any of these points. What is a good defense? That is all I'm trying to say. And I think if you don't understand the numbers, you don't know just how good the Blue Jays defense actually has been.
Right. And so what I'm trying to tell you is if you throw in a Tommy Edman for the entire season, if Mookie Betts plays the entire season like he's played the last month, and you have Freddie Freeman and a totally healthy Will Smith, I think the numbers that you're giving are entirely different for the Dodgers as far as those positions. Would I be wrong there?
I would disagree with that because I can actually calculate what some of those numbers are, and it totally depends on if Bo Bichette is part of this mix. If Bo Bichette is part of this mix, then I totally agree with you. But if it's the infield if what the Blue Jays have put out there, the Blue Jays have put up really, really good numbers, and I think we would be underestimating what their numbers are.
So who's the Blue Jays right fielder? Barger?
The Blue Jays, their right fielder would be, I believe, Addison Barger, I believe.
So who would be the better defender?
And he's bounced around with infield and right field.
Right. So who would be the better defender in right field, Barger or Andy Pages?
If it's between those two specifically, I believe it would be Andy Pages, but I believe Andy Pages is going to be playing primarily center field.
Well, I'm talking about after the Dodgers make their defensive substitutions. So who do they have in left field?
Yes. In left field, it depends on who's actually pitching, but it would be Nathan Lucas would be it.
Okay, so who would be the defensive substitution? Somebody like an Alex Call, somebody like that? Yeah, how does that? I actually don't know. How would that match up defensively?
Potentially, I would, based off the way the Dodgers have played it throughout the course of the postseason, it's been mostly Kike Hernandez who has stayed out in left field just to keep his bat in there. You could potentially have an Alex Call come out. His career has been pretty solid out there defensively. It's not the greatest numbers defensively this year. I believe just one defensive run saved. Nathan Lucas, who is in the outfield against right-handed pitching for the Blue Jays, has Alex Call.
Okay.
One defensive run saved this season, better in past years. Nathan Lucas, 10 defensive run saves this year for the Blue Jays. It's a right-handed pitching for the Blue Jays, and will stay in until potentially could have a defensive substitution and Miles Straw in the outfield.
Okay, so you're giving left field squarely to the Blue Jays? After not Kike versus the Blue Jays. I'm talking about the best defender the Dodgers situation. Yes. I'm talking about the best defender the Dodgers could put out.
Yeah, versus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and then center field, I think we're giving that to the Blue Jays, correct?
Yes, and by a wide margin.
Yes, correct. And then in right field, after the Dodgers make their defensive substitutions, I give that to the Dodgers. And I would say at the very least, when you're talking about shortstop second, you can't get better than Tommy Edman and Freddie Freeman on the right side of your infield. Mookie Betts, it would be hard to be better than he's been in the last month. And then Will Smith with his throwing arm. Yes, Alejandro Kirk is very good. But I just think so you said you can do the numbers. What has Mookie Betts say in the last 3 weeks to a month? What has his been? How many runs has he? The number that you give the runs that he saved, the runs saved, is that what it's called?
Okay, so I don't have it by month, but here's what I can have, and this is a little bit of a preview for what we're going to have during the off season. So let's break down a little bit of going off on a bit of a tangent, and I know I probably am not very popular right now to Dodgers fans because I'm talking a lot about the Blue Jays. I apologize for that. I still am a fan
not at all.
of the
This
Los
is what we
Angeles
need,
Dodgers, and we'll
brother.
be cheering them on very much. But when we're talking, yep, and when we're talking about defensive numbers, three main defensive numbers you have to take into account as far as or at least the popular ones: defensive runs saved, outs above average, and fielding run value.
Yes.
Now, for Mookie Betts this season, he's been great at defensive runs saved, which does lean a little bit more positive, which you have to take that for advantage because it's not scaled. It is scaled on 0. But if you are at 0 and you have a long course of the season, you're actually slightly below league average because defensive run sales leans a little bit positive. Mookie Betts has had 17 defensive runs saved, one of the best in Major League Baseball. Outs above average, he's at a 5. Fielding run value is at a 3. So average the defense and put it on a scale of if Mookie Betts 162 games, what would the average of his defensive run save and fielding run value be? Because I don't believe any of those statistics are perfect. So if we have a scale of 162, which makes the comparisons most fair, Mookie Betts would have a 9, which means that he would be 9 points above league average, which is incredible. That's really, really good for Mookie Betts. Where I'm seeing the comparison and where I'm so adamant about the how good Toronto is as their defense is because they have some players that are in the 20s.
Yeah. Right.
Unsaved, outs above average, and fielding run value on a scale of 162, like Alejandro Kirk behind the plate, like Dalton Varsho in center field. Ernie Clement has an average of 12, and he put up 22 defensive runs saved this year. Andres Jimenez is at 14, and he's been the primary shortstop since Bo Bichette has been out. So there is some advantages that the Blue Jays have. I don't have that recently, and this is nothing against Mookie Betts, who has been one of the best defensive shortstops in the game of baseball. All I'm trying to say is the Blue Jays defense has been elite at times this season, and they have some really good defenders.
Yeah, and so, okay, let's finish that conversation with, are the Blue Jays, again, not Mookie Betts for the entire season, the Mookie Betts for the last 3 weeks to a month, right? And not the Dodgers overall when Ha-Seong Kim's getting second base time, and so is Kike Hernandez and whoever else it may be. But with Tommy Edman at second base, with Freddie Freeman and Will Smith being healthy and that kind of deal, and the rotations they're having with defensive late substitution. So let's put a bow on this. So with all what the Dodgers have right now, not right now, what category would you put it in? Slight or significantly better defensively for the Blue Jays over the Dodgers?
I would put it between slight and significant.
Okay.
I would say the Blue Jays have the better defense, period. I would not say that it is a super strong advantage because the Dodgers have a good defense. They have a lot of good defenders.
As
you mentioned, Tommy Edman,
totally
really good defense. Andy Pages, really good defender in the outfield. They have some other guys that are really, really solid, but they also have some weaknesses, and the strengths that the Dodgers have are not as strong as the strengths that the Blue Jays have defensively, which I think gives the clear advantage defensively to the Blue Jays, even if the Dodgers have a good defense.
If Bichette DHs and Springer goes to right, does that go into the significant category then?
No, that's when it goes into a slight Blue Jays lead because George Springer is a terrible defender in the outfield, and there's a reason why he has been primarily DH. For George Springer on this season, -7 defensive runs saved,
who's going to DH?
-6 out. That is the question, and this is where you could have a little bit more of a close advantage defensively, where you could make the argument that it is a slight defensive because they're going to have to play either an injured Bo Bichette in the field or they're going to have to play an injured George Springer in the field. That's where there actually is an argument to where the Blue Jays could have just a slight advantage defense. Players that have been healthy, and if they utilize Bo Bichette more as a pinch hitter type of situation, I think that would be defensively.
Okay, Dodgers offense versus Toronto's offense. Which one's better?
It is the Dodgers offense because of their ability to hit for power more consistently than what the Blue Jays. Blue Jays put the bat on the ball a ton, which creates a different dynamic of an offense. And they still can put up a ton of runs, and they have the exact same or close to the exact same WRC plus as the Dodgers. I think it's just 1 point off on the season for the Blue Jays, but they're going to rely more on putting base hits, getting some of those runs across that way. And the power gap, at least in the regular season, was quite large between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. We saw that bear out in the Milwaukee series, albeit Toronto has a lot more power than what the Brewers have, about 20 points higher in ISO. But still, the gap between the Dodgers' power and the Blue Jays' power, especially with the players that are going to be on the postseason roster, is pretty significant. Even if you look on the season, it's about a 25-point gap between the Dodgers' ability to hit for power in ISO, a 188 for the Dodgers, versus the Blue Jays, a 162 ISO on the season. The big question remains, can the Blue Jays continue to hit for power against the Dodgers pitching staff, that especially starting pitching staff, that is superior to what they've seen so far in the postseason? That is the big question mark, and the one thing that can series is if they are able to hit for some power like they have throughout the entire course of the postseason.
Which catcher is better at throwing out runners?
I think so. If we're talking strictly about throwing out runners, I believe that advantage goes to Will Smith. If you're talking about controlling the running game, I believe that goes to Will Smith. If you're talking about framing, Alejandro Kirk's one of the best framers in baseball. So Will Smith is going to throw out runners, albeit Toronto does not steal a whole lot as the Dodgers do in the season. Overall in the season, the Dodgers had 88 stolen bases. The Blue 70. They're not going to steal a whole lot. Where Alejandro Kirk's impact comes into play is he is amazing at framing the baseball.
Yeah. Okay, so Dodgers offense, significant or slightly better than Toronto?
I would do the exact same thing as they previously with the Dodgers offense being in between slight and significant. The Dodgers offense is better than a little bit more light or towards even if the Blue Jays continue their power stroke. If they continue their power stroke, then you can say that the offense is improved. But I have serious doubts about especially some of the hitters that have overperformed for the Blue Jays this postseason to continue their hitting streak.
And then a lot of it's been one guy, which is Vlad Guerrero Jr. So, okay, Dodgers starting pitching or Toronto starting pitching. Which one's better? We've come to equal teams right now because we have defense slight. Yeah, okay. We've had defense slight for Toronto. We've had offense slight for the Dodgers. So starting pitching.
This is where a strong advantage goes to the Dodgers. And it's not just a strong advantage. It is a very strong advantage for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and then bullpen.
Bullpen, especially because the Dodgers have question marks with Alex Vesia, I'm going to put it at even though the Dodgers as an ERA in the postseason has been worse than what the Blue Jays as a bullpen. You look at some of the underlying metrics, some of those underlying metrics like Sierra, like XFIP, like expected ERA do actually lean towards Toronto, and they've gotten more swing and miss than what the Dodgers have out of the bullpen. So I'm going to do even to maybe slight Toronto if the Dodgers are missing out on Alex Vesia, but I'm just going to go ahead and say even out of the bullpen.
Okay, so the biggest thing that we've come up with to separate the two is obviously the Dodgers starting pitching. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not telling anybody here that anything they don't already know. So let's wrap this whole show up with, are there any intangibles like base? I guess base running is not really an intangible, but is there anything outside of starting pitching, bullpen, offense, and defense? Is there anything out there that's a significant favor of the Blue Jays enough to overcome the huge advantage the Dodgers have in starting pitching?
I've looked at a lot of the numbers and I've tried to find stuff like that, like base running. Like base running was one of those underrated aspects that the Brewers have. So I thought maybe with a team like Toronto, they would be a great base running team. By base running runs, they were even worse than what the Dodgers were in the regular season, a negative 5.5. So not a great defense running team. It has to do with their approach at the plate that is so unique to the Dodgers, or so unique in the game of baseball, and their ability not to strike out, that is a separator for them from other teams. Otherwise, they're fairly similar in a lot of aspects, comparing them to the Dodgers as a whole, as a team, to where there doesn't seem to be a gigantic separator between the two, especially with not having a lot of guys that are pitching really well against lefties. Now that could turn around in an instant, because some of the full season numbers for the lefties coming out of the bullpen for the Blue Jays are a lot better, or significantly better than what they've been in the regular season. Yes. So if those guys get going, that is going to be a difference maker for the Blue Jays in the series.
Okay, so what if I were to tell you I think the Dodgers bullpen, I don't think it's a tie. I think the Dodgers bullpen is better even with Alex Vesia. And only for this reason, I think the Dodgers starting pitchers stand to go much deeper into games, which will just by fault make the pitching staff or the bullpen better, because they don't get exposed as much and they stay fresher.
Yep, that is a fair argument to be able to make, and I can totally see where that is the case, especially later in the series. If you have arms that are fresher, if you only have to go and pitch 2 innings out of the bullpen, which if you average 7 innings from your should have in this series, I think that leads to significant advantage for the Dodgers if they're able to limit that, and they would start to lean towards the Dodgers. But overall, without that anticipation, without that expectation, or knowing exactly what's going to happen, at least to start out the series, I would say the bullpens are about even without Alex Vesia.
I'd say the biggest intangible would be experience. Who wins that one, Dodgers or Blue Jays?
Dodgers by far.
Yeah, so you have a by far experience, you have a by far starting pitching staff. I think the tiebreaker for the bullpen is the fact that Dodgers starters are going to complement that bullpen better than Toronto's will. You have the only thing you have in the advantage of Toronto right now is a slight advantage defensively, which I still think, hey, when you look at throwing runners out, I would take Will Smith over Alejandro Kirk. I think Mookie Betts is as good as anybody in the game at shortstop right now. I'm not talking about in April. I'm talking about right now. I wouldn't take anybody over Tommy Edman, although he made the bat throw the other day. He has Gold Glove opportunity capabilities. I definitely wouldn't take anybody else other than Freddie Freeman when somebody's throwing one in the dirt, right? I mean, Max Muncy is what he is, although he's made some huge plays
Absolutely.
in the postseason defensively. So when you kind of look at it that way, from a less analytical perspective, and you just look at advantage versus disadvantage, it really does look like a heavy favor for the Dodgers.
And this is why the Dodgers are the betting favorite. This is why the Dodgers are favored going into this series, is because on paper they have a lot of advantages going into the series. You go up and down.
Not trying to be overconfident, it's just trying to state facts here the way we see them. Yeah.
Yes, and it's trying to be as fair as we possibly can, and that's in part what my role has been with conducting all of this analysis, which I've done a deep dive into these numbers. Is I've tried to be as fair as I possibly can to the Toronto Blue Jays, because they deserve it as an organization for making it to the World Series, and it is imperative on the Dodgers not to overlook them.
The one scenario where I could see the Dodgers not winning, and it's going to make me just want to throw up, is if somehow you get to a Game 7 and it comes down to Max Scherzer pitching in Toronto. I'm just telling you, if that happens and the Dodgers have to try to beat Max Scherzer in Game 7, I don't know that I'm going to be able to watch that game. I won't be able to trust Max Scherzer not to go out and shove that night. I said that last night. That's like my doomsday, is that the Dodgers dick around long enough to where you go to a Game 7, it's in Toronto, and you got to freaking beat Max Scherzer. Man, let's not do that.
Yeah, it is, and he is going to pitch one of the games in Los Angeles, which I'm sure that's going to be a loud ovation let's just say, for Max Scherzer, similar to what it is, although not as extreme as what it's going to be for George Springer when he comes to Los Angeles.
Absolutely, Austin. This has been challenging with the internet and with, like, I can't really see your mouth talk. I can't tell when you're done talking. I've tried to be as professional as I can to make sure that we're not on top of each other, but this has been very difficult trying to figure out when you're stopping talking, because the worst thing you want is like an 8-second delay in between us communicating, because then that's literally like the worst thing. I mean, that's the hardest thing to listen to. So, hey, this has been challenging. Great job tonight, Austin. Hey, I can't tell you, if you're a Dodgers Dogs fan out there, the research that Austin did to make you familiarize yourself with the Blue Jays, it is absolutely second to none, Austin. Just incredible information that you've brought to the game on the Blue Jays. It should help all of us watch and analyze the games as it goes on. And so just awesome job there. Awesome job on the show tonight. And final thoughts here.
Yeah, first off, thank you for saying that, Casey. I put a ton of work into that, which, by the way, you have the ability to be able to access these. If you go to my X, I believe I posted something about it a couple days or so ago, as the links to each one of all of the data that I have comparing right next to each other. Be sure to be able to check that out, or it could be about this information. This is just the beginning. And the research that I've been doing this is just a small part of what I've been doing, because I want to provide the best information for you guys as possible. I know on this show today, probably a lot of you guys are thinking that I'm this massive Toronto Blue Jays fan. I am not. I'm just stating what is important to know about this, because the reason why analytics are part of the game is to provide you with the best information to make decisions. It doesn't mean that you have to follow the analytics each and every single time, but if you are neglecting what the analytics say, you are not doing your homework, and you're not doing what you can to be able to best know what the information and what the data says about specific matchups and situations. And that is exactly what we're trying to present for the Toronto Blue Jays. That is exactly, and in even more depth, what we're going to be doing coming up for the offseason. Because if you liked, or if you appreciated some of the stuff that we had for this Blue Jays Dodgers World Series matchup, watch out, because you're going to be blown away by what's coming up.
Absolutely, Austin. Anything else you want to get out there before we get out of here?
No, it's Casey. It's a privilege to be able to do this show. We've done. This is my fourth day in a row doing a show covering the World Series. So I apologize if there's any times where it's like, he seems to be repeating himself. This has been like 6 or 7 hours worth of shows and 4 days covering no games going on between the Blue Jays and the Dodgers. And it's all coverage for you guys to make sure you guys are as best prepared as possible. Ultimately, it's going to be decided on the field. World Series starts in less than 24 hours. Let's go.
It does. Hey, man, what fun it's going to be. One more sleep. That's the name of the title tonight, right? Hey, you wonderful Dodgers dogs. You're the absolute best out there. Thank you. It's probably been the hardest on you to hang in there with the glitchy video and the audio that's been cutting out all night. And Austin, honestly, we had a great crowd and they never left us. And so obviously this is one of the most loyal fan bases out there. Cannot thank you, wonderful Dodgers dogs, enough for all of your incredible support. We will have post-game shows after every single game in the World Series. So please be looking out for that. So you Dodgers dogs are the absolute best. Austin, thank you one more time.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. Hey, so until next time, one more sleep until it's World Series time. It's a great day to be a Dodger.